I'm going to introduce Tor quickly. He's one of our amazing resource management technicians that we have here at Meewasin. He's going to be presenting on restoration along the Meewasin Trail, accomplishing more through community partnerships, and kind of some of the cool things that we've done here at Meewasin. So I'm going to now turn it over to Tor to take over and present on this topic. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Katie. Just want to do a double check, make sure everybody can see the screen and hear me all right. Katie, if you could confirm.
Yeah, I can hear you for sure.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, thanks for the intro, Katie, and hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tor Lokken, and I'm, like Katie mentioned, I'm a resource management technician with Meewasin Valley Authority. Today, I'm going to discuss ecological restoration and community partnerships throughout the Meewasin River Valley. I would like to highlight some of our partnerships and showcase how they contribute to all of the restoration work that we do here. I also want to focus on our volunteer opportunities and how you can get involved too. Thank you to all the community partners for supporting much of the restoration work that happens here in the Valley. And of course, a big thank you to RBC Tech for Nature for supporting this webinar. Here's a quick overview of the presentation. We'll go through the Meewasin Valley Authority, its establishment, and a little bit of context. Some of the historic restoration projects that have happened since Meewasin was established. I want to showcase a 2024 restoration project along Fedoric Road near the Northeast Swale. And I want to talk a bit about Meewasin's native plant propagation. I want to highlight some of Meewasin's community partnerships, as well as the Friends of the Valley volunteer program. All right, to start off, a quick introduction of Meewasin. We're a nonprofit organization in Saskatoon that exists to ensure a healthy and vibrant river valley. Meewasin was created in 1979 by an act of the Saskatchewan government partnering with the City of Saskatoon and the University of Saskatchewan to work together to achieve more than they could individually. Meewasin has a beautifully written foundational document called the Meewasin Valley Project 100-Year Conceptual Master Plan, which was created by renowned architect Raymond Moriyama and his team. They surveyed Saskatoon prior to 1979 and saw the great opportunities that Saskatoon had to protect its river valley. The 100-year conceptual master plan is so unique that it has influenced other cities across the world, including Beijing, Toronto, and New York, helping them protect, regenerate, and restore green spaces in their cities. We are really so lucky to have what we have in Saskatoon. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that all of the work that we do at Meewasin is on Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. As part of our efforts towards reconciliation, we want to honor the vast knowledge held by traditional caretakers of the land as we steward it today. Meewasin is a regional conservation authority that manages several natural sites and an extensive network of trails throughout the city. Oh, I apologize. Throughout the city of Saskatoon and surrounding area. The name Meewasin is a Cree word that means it is beautiful. We have a three-part mandate to conserve, develop, and educate, and to ensure that the river valley stays healthy and vibrant, while balancing human use and conservation, both for present and future generations. That's a bit of a mouthful. It is the largest urban conservation zone in Canada, comprising approximately 6,700 hectares and has over 107 kilometers of trail in and around Saskatoon and into the RM of Corman Park. We strive to enhance biodiversity, restore and conserve these unique landscapes, while simultaneously promoting year-round accessibility through public programming. As Saskatoon grows, our sites and trails see more and more use. And in 2024, Meewasin saw an astounding 2.36 million trail visits. And we'll get into a bit of the historic restoration work here at Meewasin. As a newly established organization, Meewasin created a guide to manage and conserve its large conservation jurisdiction. Following a lengthy field survey process starting in 1984, the 1987 Riverbank Restoration Study was created. The purpose of the study was to provide Meewasin with the necessary information to develop and implement site restoration plans throughout the valley. The study helped determine appropriate management objectives and strategies. The report divided the area into 32 distinct land units, many of which are named the same and have the same boundaries as today, and they identified 34 degradation problems. It prioritized the sites, identified problems, and developed restoration techniques to address them. It also called for a formal monitoring program and an overarching framework for decision-making, planning, and action. This report helped lay the foundation for many of our more recent reports and documents that guide Meewasin's work today. The following slides showcase a couple of large-scale restoration projects that that shaped much of the river valley we enjoy today. I just want to mention all the past Meewasin staff and community members for all their contributions to the river valley that we appreciate today. I didn't have time to dig through the historic reports in depth to get many of the specifics on some of these projects, but I'm hoping that some of the pictures speak for themselves, especially to the magnitude of the restoration work that has happened in the valley since the creation of Meewasin. If anyone has questions or comments, please write them in the chat or bring them up at the end of the webinar. I also have a few more slides of pictures at the end with historical pictures that we can take a look at if time allows. So to start off, this is Gabriel Dumont Park in 1988. Many of these large projects that happened in the 80s saw a huge amount of dirt and fill being brought into the riverbank or onto the riverbank to stabilize. And these were large earth-moving projects. Meewasin would have contributed to the trail development, revegetation, and restoring the sites with native species kind of a little bit afterward, as well as oversight for the projects. So this whole series of pictures is really interesting. You see like the major earth moving picture with the bulldozer, and then followed by they would have brought topsoil in, and there's an old tractor pulling a seeder, likely planting a mix of native species to revegetate the riverbank. And there's a picture of a ATV pulling harrows, probably pre and post seeding. And I just want to note the steepness of the terrain and topography, which the old school tractor and seeder seems to be handling no problem. Another example is the Saskatoon Natural Grasslands in 1988. It looks like a fence line restoration project using chunks of probably displaced native prairie, likely harvested from the nearby city neighborhood development. It looks like this was supported by the Saskatoon Cadet volunteers. And actually, our volunteer coordinator, Katie, mentioned that the cadet program still volunteers with Meewasin from time to time and supports the work that we do. And it's interesting to see that some of these partnerships, community partnerships that Meewasin has developed have lasted decades. Another example here is Pedersen's Ravine in 1989. This site was known as a bit of a garbage and dumping site. The first picture in the series shows an excavator with kind of the initial cleanup, and then I'll point over here, then the skid steer doing kind of a final cleanup. And then they would have brought in some topsoil, and then here's the tractor again with a seeder, likely smoothing out and probably planting a mix of native grass species on the upper slope. And then you'll notice all of the dots or little bulges. Those would be straw bales, which would have been spread. And then if you jump to the next picture, you'll see a whole team of volunteers planting, likely plug planting or potted plants to stabilize the slope and revegetate with native species. And then I'm not sure who this is, but it's a guy standing looking over a nicely restored slope. All right. And then we'll move, I guess, a few years later, in 2007, the Ministry of Highways and Infrastructure realigned and widened Highway 219 all the way to, I guess, the Chief Whitecap Reserve. This required the replacement of the aging timber bridge that spanned Beaver Creek. It was replaced with a 5-meter wide corrugated culvert to upgrade or for the road upgrade. To complete this project, the Ministry of Highways needed to alter the creek bed. And because Beaver Creek supports fish habitat, the project actually initiated Fisheries and Oceans Canada to provide oversight and required several mitigation and monitoring measures. There was both fish habitat and riparian habitat that was impacted during this project, and both would need to be restored back to their original functionality to satisfy the requirements of Fisheries and Oceans Canada. So the guidelines required the construction of a new channel with similar physical characteristics to the original channel, and then bank stabilization using bioengineering, which would be willow staking, brush mattressing, and brush layering, all using mostly willow species. The project required digging right into the bank and even filling some of the creek in. So the in-water work of the project was required to be completed during the winter months to avoid a disruption to fish spawning activities. The removal of the bridge and installation of the culvert and construction of the new channel was completed between January and mid-March of 2007. All the large earth moving and earthscaping, as well as the installation of all the riprap, so that's those large stones right on the edge of the creek bank, was done before the end of mid-March. The remaining bioengineering or soft landscaping was done in late September 2007. So they didn't really do anything during I guess, during the fish spawning season and during the summer. Meewasin Valley Authority was a partner on this project and led the sourcing and harvesting of willow stakes, as well as the implementing of the soft landscaping or bioengineering parts of the project. The Beaver Creek area contains fine silts and sand, creating highly erodible slopes. So stabilization was the key focus of the bioengineering, with erosion control as the main concern. Bioengineering in this case meant using live plant materials to perform an engineering function. So the bioengineering involved willow staking along the riprap edge, so punching willow stakes in amongst the riprap, brush mattressing and layering along the steep bank sections, and then coconut fiber erosion control blankets with a mix of potted plants and native seed mix on all other disturbed areas. Excuse me. This was a massive project and required a ton of manual labor. Meewasin harvested close to 7,600 willow stakes and stems for the required bioengineering techniques. All plant material was harvested from nearby crown land. So 2,100 willow stakes were installed throughout the riprap area. So that's the large boulders right on the edge of the creek. 2,700 willow stems were bundled and laid down to create brush mattressing, which is this picture here, all laid down, and then that was later covered in salvaged native soil to help establish the bank again. This would have been hugely labor intensive. All of this brush mattressing was staked with 2x4s and then all roped down to secure before the soil went on. So it would have taken a long time and a lot of labor. And then 2,800 willow stems formed the brush layering, which is this picture here where willow stems are placed horizontally into the bank and layered with soil. All right, on top of this, there was close to 2,000 potted plants, which included sandbar willow, wolf willow, red osier dogwood, snowberry, and native roses. And then approximately an acre of erosion control blanket and native seed mix installed wherever there was disturbed soil. The project was the first of its kind for the Ministry of Highways and Infrastructure to bioengineer a highway development. It was noted as a challenging project involving multiple partners and significant planning, commitment, and effort. It was stipulated that all restoration must function as intended, or further remedial work would be required to the satisfaction of Fisheries and Oceans Canada. However, the project was considered a resounding success and a great example of riparian restoration, with many great results, lessons, and opportunities for guiding future bioengineering and restoration work. In fact, the amount of fish habitat created during the project actually resulted in a net gain in fish habitat for the creek. One small issue came up, and it was a small slope failure on a steep section of bank. The small slump was remedied by installing something called a wattle fence. Larger balsam poplar stakes were used to brace smaller, kind of interwoven willow stems to form a structural wall. And the neat thing is that all parts of the fence had the ability to grow and further stabilize the bank. So the whole project and the bioengineering portion of it is a really neat aspect to this project. In the pictures here, we have year one after the completion of the project, and you can just see a few of the vegetation is starting to green up the bank and grow. And then at year 7, we have lush native vegetation and a stable riparian creek bank. So overall, the restoration work had a great establishment, was considered a success, and continues to be an example of large riparian restoration in the area. All right, so why do we do restoration work other than to make things look nice? On a global scale, there are some big things happening in regards to ecological restoration. The United Nations actually designated 2021 to 2030 as the decade on ecosystem restoration. And through the UN Biodiversity Conference, or COP15 agreement, which happened in 2022, one of the key targets that Canada has committed to is ensuring that by 2030, at least 30% of degraded areas are under effective restoration. So those dates are coming up pretty quick, and I think we have still have a lot of work to do in restoration, but there's a lot of good things happening as well. So on a more local scale, Meewasin plays a meaningful role in restoration. Our conservation work is led by our current guiding document, the Valley-Wide Resource Management Plan. This plan covers a 10-year time period from 2017 to 2027, providing a series of actions, goals, and objectives to guide the work that we do. The Valley-Wide Plan was created in partnership with the Nature Conservancy of Canada and funded by Environment and Climate Change Canada. It identifies 4 broad conservation targets, including native grasslands, hydro-riparian areas, swale complexes, and wetlands. The plan describes goals, initiatives, and culminates in over 180 specific actions to be completed over the lifetime of the plan. The Valley-Wide Resource Management Plan is available on our website, and a QR code to the link will be available at the end of this presentation. The plan has a main goal targeting restoration in the valley, with many site-specific and deliverable actions. So I'd like to introduce the 2024 Fedoric Road Restoration Project that we undertook this year. So this is the west half of the Northeast Swale. In 2020, Fedoric Road had road construction and trail upgrades on the entire length of the Northeast Swale, stretching from Central Avenue, which is way over here, up Fedoric Road, stretching all the way to Evergreen Boulevard. We're going to focus on the area from Central Avenue just to the Storm Pond there for today's presentation. The project The project upgraded the multi-use trail that runs adjacent to the northeast swale from 2 meters wide to 4 meters wide. This made a significant disturbance along the northeast swale, creating a bare soil patch that was roughly 5 meters wide, running the length from Central Avenue all the way to the storm pond. The restoration for this disturbed area is being taken care of by Meewasin, and it will be divided into sections and stages for a multi-year project. The area highlighted in red, way down here, is the area that we focused on for in 2024. So here's a close-up of the plan for the area highlighted in red. Starting in 2024, our first stage objective was to stabilize and restore this steep section of disturbed area. It's roughly a 250 meter by 5 meter wide length. There will be mulch tree and shrub beds on the steepest sections of the site, and those are the green areas that you see here. So there's 4 of them. Excuse me, sorry, just having a technical difficulty. And then the rest of the site will be seeded to native grass seed mix and plug planting from, in combination across the rest of the site. As a general division, native grass seed mix will be spread on the upper slopes, and while native perennial plugs will be planted on the mid to lower slopes. All right, and here's the disaster of a site that it used to be. There were a few constraints and issues to this site. This picture doesn't seem to do it justice, but it is a pretty steeply sloped area. Steep enough that we couldn't get our equipment up there and had to rely on hand tools for most of the project. There were issues with erosion, having significant sediment runoff buildup across the pathway after rain, and especially after the spring snowmelt. Also, the soils are not native. They were brought in with the project, leading to significant weed issues. The slope is also southern facing with a relatively thin soil profile, making for very dry conditions during the summer heat drought, which definitely impacts establishment during the restoration process. So these issues have contributed to the delay in the restoration work, because this pathway was put in 2020, and we haven't really been able to get to it until 2024. But it's actually been important to try to deplete the weed seed bank from the non-native soil that was brought in, and this has been a multi-year process of weed control, and also the need for some erosion control was an additional step, as well as drought conditions during the 2022 and 2023 seasons really didn't provide ideal conditions for us to undertake restoration work, so we held off. And it's important to note that native plants and seeds are a very precious commodity and in short supply in many senses. And it's super important to kind of make sure that we give the native species the best chance they can to survive during restoration projects, because the supply of seed is definitely a limiting factor. So one of the issues that we had was the weed issues, and since 2020, Meewasin RM program has managed for weeds. We've been very successful in controlling many of the weeds, including absinthe wormwood and many others. However, we've had pretty poor control of herbicide-resistant kochia, which is a noxious weed in Saskatchewan. Kochia is a notorious resistant weed to various chemicals, and they're finding triple resistant to group 2, 4, and 9, which are the common herbicides that can be sprayed. And we're currently looking into a new group of herbicide for better control down the road. Like I said, kochia is a noxious weed, and it's a prolific seed producer, producing up to 30,000 seeds per plant, and it's the tumbleweed you see collecting on fence lines throughout the prairies. So it's very common, and it's known as one of the worst agricultural weeds on the prairies. So given our weed issues, we were very fortunate to have a lot of help to turn the site from the left, very weedy, and into kind of more of a clean and landscaped restoration bed that's ready to be planted. So to get the weed issue under control, we used an integrated weed management approach that included spraying, mowing, and weeding over multiple years. And with a final push of hand weeding and bagging the herbicide-resistant kochia immediately prior to this project. And I'll touch on that because we really relied on one of our community partners to help out with that weed control. So after the weeding was complete, we had to prepare the planting bed. We started with trenching, then raking, and a bit of rock picking to clean up the site. We needed a uniform surface with 2-inch deep trenching to help support the erosion control logs that we were going to install. So we needed one trench running down the center of the mid slope and one trench running right next to the pathway, the length of the site. We were lucky enough that we were able to use the skid steer to dig the bottom trench, and we had plenty of help, volunteers and community partners to dig the mid-slope trench by hand. So to help with our erosion control problem, we decided to go with a sediment control log. The logs consist of biodegradable containment fabric, kind of similar to cotton weave, filled with aspen excelsior fibers, so wood wool, which is like a finely shredded aspen fiber, and it looks a lot like spaghetti. They're meant to be installed and left to degrade in place, and they are designed to be functional for around 3 years. The logs came in huge bales that we were able to distribute around the site with the skid steer, luckily, and then we unfolded and laid them all out in the trenches by hand. The logs required staking with 2-foot-long stakes and a minimum of 16 inches in the soil, which is fairly deep and required a ton of hammering. So there's a variety of erosion control products and techniques that we could use, similar to the restoration project on Highway 219, like erosion blankets and matting and a variety of others. However, due to cost and the install process and just resources in general, and whether or not they're necessary for the project, we decided to go a bit more of a minimal erosion control option. And we thought that it would be sufficient for the project, and I think it worked out. So the next part of the next part of the project was like a production line. There's a few people laying out sediment control logs, as you can see in the picture. There's another group laying out wooden stakes every 2 feet, and then the rest of the group was busy hammering, driving these long stakes into the ground. The preparation of the site and the installation of these sediment logs was a huge team effort and required almost 30 people, the better part of a full day. So, and the erosion control installation was a great success. And later that fall, after a few heavy rains, we saw excellent erosion control with almost no sedimentation on the pathway. And I'm really interested to see the results this spring after snowmelt, how the pathway looks and how the erosion control is supporting some of the plantings that we have done there. So after the erosion control was installed, we started planting the site. Urban Camp, one of our community partners, helped us spread straw mulch on the lower and mid-slope sections of the planting area, and they helped us install or plant over 600 plugs right into the straw mulch. Also, there was a school group from Sylvia Fedoric with 30+ students, along with Meewasin staff and volunteers, that planted close to 2,000 plugs in a single day into the lower mid-slope portion of this site. And then for the mulch beds and shrub, or the mulch tree and shrub beds, Tree Canada and Saputo provided corporate volunteers to plant 155 trees and shrubs, which completed that portion. In 2024, the plug plantings completed approximately 1/3 of the plug plantings for the site. And so the remaining 2/3 will be planted in 2025. I think it's going to roughly take about 5,000 more plugs to complete this portion of the restoration of Fedoric Road. And we'll be looking for a lot of community support and volunteers to help complete the project in the upcoming year. We did not get to the grass seeding portion of this restoration project on the upper portion of the site, or the upper slope, but we are aiming to have it seeded this spring of 2025. And on the picture there are the species that we have put on site. All of the plugs are produced in our Meewasin greenhouse from native seed collected on Meewasin site, and the trees and shrub are sourced from local greenhouses. All right. So when creating a native grass seed mix, it's important to know what is in the plant community that you're trying to emulate. So you have to pick what you're putting out there. And Meewasin doesn't propagate any of our own native grass seed, so we do have to source it from I guess local companies. And you have to know what you need based on where you're going to do the restoration work. So we have 2002 Quadrat data that shows us what species we can expect to see in the adjacent northeast swale. And I guess the goal of restoration is to emulate that as much as possible. And when making grass seed mix, the higher the diversity, the better. So the more species, the better. And I guess you're mostly limited by availability and cost. So there was a total of 15 accounted for species, and yeah, and we chose a seed mix that had 8 species. Two notable species that weren't included were Western porcupine grass, which has very limited availability commercially and is extremely expensive, as well as Plains rough fescue has very limited availability, is really difficult to propagate, and is also very expensive. So those 2 species we were not able to include in our grass species mix, but we included as many as we possibly could based on affordability and availability. Because sometimes native species are just not available. They either didn't produce that season, or I'm sure there's other factors. So Meewasin doesn't have the capacity to source our own seed for large projects like this in terms of collecting on our sites. It's very labor and resource intensive, so we do source from local suppliers. And all seed is Saskatchewan produced and has been sent to a lab for seed certification and guaranteeing the quality and germination rate, and making sure it doesn't contain weed seeds or anything else that we don't want on our restored site. All right. So one of the key initiatives in the Valley-wide Resource Management Plan is to use locally sourced native plant material on restoration projects. Meewasin does a great job of this already, and we have been propagating native plant species from wild harvested seed from our sites for many years. There are also current discussions into expanding our greenhouse capacity, and Meewasin is involved in discussions with partners across the prairies to develop a possible native seed or to develop native seed production capacity through native seed banking and native seed networking. It's a really exciting initiative, especially for the field of ecological restoration, as we rely so heavily on native seed supply and good sources of locally sourced seed. So yeah, this takes us to Meewasin's greenhouse. Meewasin's horticultural program manages our native plant propagation. All plugs planted on Meewasin sites are produced at this facility from wild harvested seed sourced from Meewasin sites. So everything is in-house for our native plant plugs. And I think that Meewasin Greenhouse is one of the largest wild collected native seed greenhouses on the prairies. So we have quite a unique and special thing here. Our greenhouse operates seasonally. It operates from early spring to support native seed propagation, and it's heated a little bit to extend the season. It has a capacity of approximately 7,000 plugs that are grown annually. They're planted in styrofoam trays using soilless medium. I should note that all native seed that is produced in this greenhouse is ethically collected and wild harvested from Meewasin sites, which means that only a certain amount of seed can be harvested from any area, and that you're not consecutively hitting the same areas year after year, so that you don't impact the native prairie from propagating and maintaining its biodiversity. And another note on this is that seed collection, processing, and propagation takes significant resources. The time, space, labor, storage, and maintenance of all of the components to grow that 7,000 plugs is incredibly labor intensive, and it takes a lot of work. And it's not an easy thing to do. Here's Chanel, our horticulture coordinator. She runs the greenhouse and all of our native seed propagation. The greenhouse usually supports around 13 native species, with some variation annually depending on seed collected and availability. But largely we use purple prairie clover, hairy golden aster, bergamot, harebell, gaillardia, potentilla, stiff goldenrod, three-flowered avens, primrose, smooth aster, blue grama, little blue stem, and green needlegrass. All right, Meewasin's native plant nursery, which is right beside the greenhouse. I should note that Meewasin does not produce any trees or shrubs at this time. The plant nursery provides a holding area for the trees and shrubs that we source from local companies. And it also provides a holding area for last season's plugs that we simply didn't have time to plant on our sites, and also the new plugs that are coming from the greenhouse and need to be, I guess, taken outside. Yeah, we usually source our trees from local companies like Lakeshore, Shan Greenhouse, and Dieter Martin. And I should note the significant watering and weeding maintenance throughout the season that the nursery takes to maintain. So some of the common species that we see moving through our nursery are aspen, creeping juniper, wolf willow, snowberry, prickly rose, and Saskatoon. I should note it's irrigated. It's a fenced compound to protect from wildlife, because deer and any other large animal would love nice young plants that are on display or and ready to gobble up. And then one more note is that we do some willow staking at Meewasin, and if you'll see the yellow tub near the nursery is where we hold, I guess, our wild harvested willow stakes in the spring before we can pound them into the ground. All right, another key initiative that relates to restoration work in the valley is partnerships. Meewasin should foster, develop, and continue working relationships and partnership opportunities with local, regional, and provincial NGOs, government agencies, and special interest groups related to conservation, resource management, and land trust activities in the Saskatoon region. To me, this sounds like almost everybody, and so Meewasin should partner with everybody. One partnership that I would like to highlight is Saskatoon's correctional program, Urban Camp. Urban Camp has been around since 1980s, so it's over 40 years old. It's a one-of-a-kind program in Saskatchewan. It provides supervised community service work assignments throughout Saskatoon. Program partner it partners with community organizations and government agencies, so NGOs, and really any other community organization that needs some extra hands or support. The program sends out crews of 10 inmates supervised by one correction officer in vans on a I guess daily basis during the week. Typical duties and work assignments that they're sent to are general manual labor, landscaping, building and property maintenance, cleaning, community gardening, construction, event cleanup. I saw them at Winter Shines, so they have a heavy presence in many of the Saskatoon events or civic events that happen around the city, both cleanup and takedown. And as well as they provide disaster relief support for wildfire evacuation camps up north and provide a really good service for that. As well as they provide snow shoveling as a fee for service for seniors throughout Saskatoon. And yeah. All right. So in 2023, they got a brand new facility next to the Saskatoon Correctional Center. The program supports about 50, or it supports 50 reduced custody inmates with a requirement of being low security, reduced sentence. So that I think that has to do with good behavior, and within 180 days of their release date. It provides community-based reintegration and rehabilitation services. And the program supports 3 work crews that get sent out on work assignments on any given day. And the remaining 20 inmates stay at the facility, taking part in the daily upkeep of camp, as well as taking part in the programming. A good development is in 2024, Saskatchewan government partnered with Saskatoon Tribal Council to further urban camp programming initiatives in Saskatoon. And this partnership will aid the transition of inmates back into the community. Urban Camp also provides on-site support services, including counseling, education, and employment support. And I just want to mention that Meewasin has been partnering with Urban Camp for many years. I think some of the trails at Beaver Creek were built 20, 30 years ago. There's been lots of riverbank and site cleanups, snow shoveling, as well as they do our annual wood chopping for the Meewasin Rink downtown and the fire pit there. So Urban Camp helped us with a ton of field work during the fall of 2024, to help us wrap up the season. They helped us a total of 7 days at the Northeast Swale. This included restoration work, weed control, erosion control, landscaping, planting, and mulching. As they helped us with some invasive species removal activities, they also helped us with kochia, carigana, and absinthe management. So Urban Camp provided support for all aspects of the Fedoric Restoration Project. The installation of the erosion control ended up being a joint Urban Camp volunteer collaboration. So there were positive reviews from all sides, volunteers, Meewasin staff, Urban Camp, and it was evidently a rewarding experience for everyone working as a community on this project. We heard nothing but good things, and we were able to complete a huge project in a very short amount of time with the extra and added help. So we're grateful to have the support for this project, and we're going to be planning more collaborative Urban Camp volunteer events in the future. So Urban Camp spent 3 full days pulling and bagging kochia on the entire stretch of the Central Avenue Storm Pond Fedoric Road restoration site. And it was a huge area, and they filled an entire dump trailer full of bagged kochia on each of those days. So this was the largest part of their help for the season, and we couldn't have done it without them. Also, they did 1 day of absinthe control using golf club style whackers in an effort to prevent seed set and spread in the Northeast Swale, and then 2 days of carigana removal using loppers, handsaws to cut down and pile. And then we plan to either burn or mulch the carigana piles in the 2025 season. Urban Camp program was great to collaborate with. The corrections officers were a pleasure to work with, and inmates came ready and engaged to work. And were willing to learn and actually take part in all of the conservation activities. We are hoping to continue working with them in 2025 and have already lined up a few activities for the spring. It's a really great program that is a win-win scenario, increasing Meewasin's capacity to accomplish more conservation work while also providing meaningful community engagement and learning experiences for the urban camp inmates. All right, Meewasin has many other partnerships as well. Meewasin has a great relationship with both public and Catholic school systems. Our volunteer coordinator sends out potential projects and opportunities to the school superintendents. And then teachers are able to reach out and coordinate class participation for these volunteer opportunities. And this both helps out with our conservation work, but it also fulfills hands-on learning based objectives for their education programming as well. So another win-win with the school partnerships. Our highest number of participants at a planting event for 2024 was the Spadina Lift Station that saw 175 plus students helping for that afternoon. That is a whole team of planters. Another partner is our corporate sponsors who partner with Meewasin in a variety of ways, from donation agreements supporting plants and resources, private volunteer events for corporate employee volunteers, or they can simply tag along to our scheduled public volunteer events. So I guess I got to ask, so come out to our volunteer events and sign up for our volunteer program. Our program is called Friends of the Meewasin Valley, and you can check out our website to sign up. In 2021, we hired a specific coordinator to run the program, and we've seen immense growth in our volunteer base to over 1,000 people. In 2024, Meewasin accumulated over 12,000 hours of volunteer work, and I just want to highlight that volunteers are an absolute essential part of Meewasin, and I want to, I guess, much of the work that we do simply couldn't happen without their support. Meewasin's volunteer program is generously funded by the Grandy Family Foundation, and many of our specific activities are funded through eco-action grants. So here's a few of the awesome volunteer activities that you can take part in. There's wildlife fence tabbing, the fence tab cutting, baby's breath removal, buckthorn control. There's willow staking, nodding thistle, whacking, beaver tree wire wrapping, riverbank cleanup, and then select winter activities, including twig and bud, identification, and wildlife tracking, among other pop-up events. I also want to mention that Meewasin hosts some incredible events and experiences as well, from downtown walking tours to sip and skate at our downtown rink to a whole suite of awesome experiences at Beaver Creek. Check them out on our website. And with that, I just want to say another big thank you to all the volunteers, partners, and community members who contribute to the work that we do. We really couldn't do it without you. And so thank you for taking the time to tune in and hear about some of the restoration work and community partnerships happening in the Valley. Thanks again to RBC Tech for Nature for supporting this webinar, and to all of you for attending today. Are there any questions?
If you do have a question, please feel free to unmute, turn camera on and ask away, or throw it in the chat, whatever you're more comfortable with. But again, thank you so much, Tor, to everything that you and the resource management team does. I will send an email out after, just outlining what we do for volunteer activities, Sam's experiences programs, all sorts of things.
Awesome. Awesome.
But if there are no more questions, we'll end this. But if you do think of a question later, just please send me an email, because I've already sent you some about this. So I'll send an email out, and you can just ask away in the email, and I'll pass them along to Tor or whoever might be able to answer them.
Sounds good. And if we have a couple minutes here, I can definitely go through a couple more pictures that I put together from some of the historic projects that have happened. So this is Victoria Park in 1987. And it's incredible to think about all the work that's happened on the riverbank in Saskatoon. Almost everywhere has been touched by some form of restoration work. And Meewasin has done a pile of work. So even along Victoria, they did willow staking and installing riparian species to stabilize the riverbank. Here's Ravine Drive, which would have been restored as well. There's not like comprehensive pictures for all of these site developments, but. And then this is a kind of a funny one. There's 80s fashion. So I put in for a proposal to Meewasin to order sleeveless crop tops for our team uniforms for the upcoming season. I've heard 80s style is back in.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you do think of questions, please send them my way. Thank you so much, Tor, for this wonderful presentation. That's all we've got today.
Thanks, Katie.